Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Constituent Servicing and Federal Agencies, sponsored by Xerox on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. I'm Jason Miller. Our panelists today are Gwen Costin, the Director of Digital Services and Innovation Center in the Office of Citizen Services and Innovative Technologies at the General Services Administration, Amanda Nguyen, the Director of Web Communications for the Department of Agriculture, and Ron Woody, a Senior Solutions Architect for Xerox Federal. We talked a lot about the impact of social media. We talked a lot about not just paving the cow paths. I still love that expression from back in the Bush administration with Mark Foreman, if you guys remember him. But let's talk about how you know that you're heading down the right path. And the idea behind that is obviously predictive analytics. I think you all brought it up earlier. Let me turn to Ron first, since you probably provide these services to some constituents. How does it work? What are you looking at when you talk about predictive analytics for constituent services?
Well, it just depends on the depth of the information. Sometimes it can be as simple as, for one of our major commercial clients, we noticed every time a new customer gets a bill, they call in. Every time you change your bill, everybody calls in. So therefore, you can go back to the client, you can go back to the agency or whatever and say, let's be a little bit more informative. Let's educate, since we know, and that's a very simple aspect of predictive analytics, but you know that when you change something, you're going to get a certain number of calls, a certain number of tweets, a certain number of emails. So let's be proactive on the front end, whether it's with your IVR, whether it's information that you put in with the new bill, to make things happen. As far as the statistics and everything, I mean, it drives efficiencies. You can actually drive the communication method you want to use with, whether it be with incentives or in any number of ways, to make sure that you're prepared for what may be the next need from the customer or the constituent.
As soon as you said, if you can get ahead of the curve, you can cut back on your costs, because every one fewer call to the customer service center, you can put a monetary label to it and say, well, it's less money. I mean, are you guys able to do that for customers?
I think at times, yes. And at times, I mean, that's what we do, is try to make things more efficient, try to make things quicker, try to make things less expensive, whether it be for the government or our commercial clients. And that's key. That's what we're in the business of. And fortunately, I work for a company that's been an innovator for 75 years. I mean, they've been at the forefront of technology, so it kind of helps.
Let me turn to Gwen for a second. When GSAs, because you guys do such a broad job around customer service, are you guys starting to help agencies or use predictive analytics to tell agencies, hey, we're seeing this uptick at this time of the month or during this quarter when taxes are due or when the checks aren't, Social Security checks go out or anything like that?
One of the things that we were able to do over this past year as part of the implementation of the digital White House digital strategy was we actually implemented a government-wide view of web traffic. And we call it the Digital Analytics Program. And we have common code on over 3,000 websites in the federal government, and this continues to increase. And what we're able to see for the first time are these types of broader trends. And so where an agency has the view of their own data, they actually don't know what's going on across different agencies. And so let me just give you a couple of quick examples of some of the things we're able to see. And it really piggybacks on some of the things that Ron and Amanda were saying. One of the things we found is that last year on Christmas Day, most people who access government websites did it from mobile devices. There wasn't like a huge uptick of people, but the people who were using government sites on Christmas were doing it from mobile. And so that actually, if you're trying to get some information out at that time, it better be mobile friendly, for example. The other thing we were able to do is kind of compare across industry and non-industry. So overall, we're seeing about 20% of traffic coming to websites coming from mobile devices. Although, Facebook sees, 70% of their traffic coming from mobile devices. But some of our agencies are seeing maybe a 1% uptake via mobile. And so from taking a look at that information and those comparative pieces of information, you could say, does this actually make sense? Going back to the very beginning of this conversation, what are our customers doing and how are they interacting with us at this time? I'll give you another example, too, in terms of looking at those predictive analysis. And this is not from GSA. It's from our friends at HHS and the team over at AIDS.gov. They were a big innovator in the mobile space, in part because they saw that their traffic was increasing from mobile devices. But rather than say this is what it is right now, they were looking at the trending, and the trend was going up. And that's a real critical thing. And then they stepped back and said, what are the questions people are asking us on mobile devices? And it was very different than what was happening on the desktop. And so if you think about the information that's being provided on AIDS.gov, on the desktop, people were looking kind of about symptoms. On the mobile device, they were saying, what happens if my condom broke? So it's really an in-the-moment piece. And so then they were saying, well, at our mobile experience, we need to address these types of information as our traffic is increasing in this way. And so then segmenting the traffic into those different ways and meeting those expectations and those needs based upon data.
I want to go back to the piece about the digital government strategy and the view of web traffic.
Yeah.
What's happening to that data? Because I can imagine it's so valuable data because you're seeing who's coming, when they're coming, how often they're coming. I know, for instance, federalnewsradio.com, we know that we get spikes, at first thing in the morning and at lunch and at the end of the day, and we know the weekends people don't visit us as much, though they should. What happens to that data? And then maybe we'll see have Amanda join us.
I want to back away from one of the things you said. We don't know who's coming.
Yes, the who I meant.
People are coming.
We know, right.
The numbers. We don't know that.
We don't know that Ron Woody has visited the USDA farmers market website 3 times last week and should stay away from the farmers market.
For doing so.
Yes, it's much appreciated. Well, the one thing is that this is even though we have over 3,000 properties that are there, it's still nascent. So we're still looking at the implementation. So it's hard at this point, as we're still bringing people on, to make a lot of assumptions. So the things that I say are very much caveated, is that we don't have the entire universe at this point. And then we're increasingly getting that. So I'm super excited about that. And so with that caveat, what we're seeing is that the data in its aggregate, because there's so much of it, is really hard to make any decisions based on. Because it's just huge. And as we were talking earlier, that there are all these different needs and different people. And even within USDA, you probably see that your roll-up data has certainly a value, but it's hard to make decisions based upon it. So it's really kind of the comparative data, in whether it's in subgroups or whether it's within an agency, in different ways. I think that's where the value is on that.
Let me turn to Amanda real quick as well. When you guys are you guys doing predictive analytics? Sounds like you are, just based on, you said, of the mobile device example used earlier. And then are you starting to get data, for instance, from GSA's government-wide view?
So we actually had our analytics program implemented before the digital strategy came out. So that was really exciting for us now that we actually have a year plus worth of data. So we can look back. And a lot of what we do is seasonally driven. So we know when kids are headed back to school, our USDA for Kids page kind of creeps up in the hits or the searches and whatever that may be. So we know, well, let's get it on the homepage and make it easier for our users to discover that information. We have a digital analytics specialist whose job is to kind of look at this work and see what recommendations we can make. So, of course, we have to identify what are the goals because there's so much. We really want to maximize and optimize the reach of our content and make sure that the right folks are seeing it. We don't know who are coming, but we know where they might be from. So if we're doing a big rollout in a particular state, we can look and see, did we get an increase in traffic from that region? And if we didn't, why not? Maybe we need to do some more targeted outreach and make sure that people in that locality are accessing the information. And it also helps improve our delivery and distribution. So we know, based on data, that we have certain dead zones where people just don't open our messages. It's pretty much lunchtime and 5 to 6 p.m. when people are commuting home. Fridays are kind of a wash. So we resend things or avoid those times to make sure that we get the right number of opens or clicks or whatever it might be.
And the interesting thing is, you're not looking for clicks because you have an advertiser, well, with due respect, Ron, who's looking for page views and all that. Because you're really trying to reach people. And I think that goes back to this initial part of the conversation about expectations. if you know people don't look at it between 5 and 6, why are you sending it at 5 and 6?
Yep.
We can send it at 2 and 3 and 4, and then really get people feel like, oh, the government is listening to me subconsciously in many ways.
Sure.
Is that kind of what you're seeing? Is how you kind of make certain decisions?
Absolutely. And we give that feedback to agencies who all have access to the same data, but we try to provide that guidance to them to make it easier for trends we're seeing across the board. We see the same thing for the type of content that's sent out. Infographics, huge. We do kind of weekly reports that are more granular, and then monthly for larger trends to see what might be happening and where those, ups or downs are going. And we see consistently that certain types of media and materials are more popular with our users. So we try to, be more efficient with the limited time and resources we have and do those things instead of perhaps what we may have been doing historically.
This is an excellent segue because predictive analytics falls into that big data category, one of the many buzzwords in the IT world, but it also falls into cloud, and we've talked a little bit about mobile. Let me start with Gwen from a technology perspective, and none of us are really technologists per se, but are you seeing there's a move to cloud? People are really focusing on the big data piece, or are all these things kind of impacting the idea of customer service?
Absolutely, Jason. I think that there's a perfect storm of a lot of things that are occurring right now that weren't before. And so, I was talking to my husband the other day, and we were talking about, he found an old Clio or Trio or whatever the heck it was, this old device, like a Palm Pilot.
The Palm Pilot, right.
And my son looked at it like it was, came out of, Jurassic Park. And I remember the day I walked into the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, my first government job, and they handed me a BlackBerry and a flip phone. That was only 8 years ago. Those devices were not the same 8 years ago. And so I think it's really crazy that we're moving so quickly. And so when we're looking at things like cloud, what cloud allows us to do is to really take this idea of mobile and make it real. So before, if you had to keep, my husband used to have a cool watch where he used to put it in front of the screen and would download data to it. This was like in the 90s. It was crazy, wacky guy. But right now, you don't have to put it to a screen. It's available. We have Wi-Fi everywhere. We have 4G.
Plus the Bluetooth idea that if you have it to your phone, to the watch.
Right. And so, I actually, when my husband bought me a Kindle for Christmas 2 years ago, I opened up my Kindle, and as I opened it up, I signed into my well-used Amazon account, and I was there on Chapter 3 of The Ender's Game, which I had started reading on my iPhone device. And so it's all there at the same time, and the cloud allows that. And then that means that I expect that wherever I am, I could get it. So I, at home, my son and I, we both have a phone that actually you could do you could text not just on the phone, but from my computer to the phone. And so I have his text in front of me or on my phone. And so these are the expectations that we're dealing with. And this is enabled by these great devices that we have in our hands and the cloud. And because we could not do it before the cloud. And so how does this change everything? In every single step of the way.
Ron, from your perspective, when you talk to your clients in the federal government, are they automatically going to cloud? Do you have to take them to the cloud? Because we think it's been around forever, but really only gotten popular, if you will, or acceptable in the last 2 or 3 years.
Sure, it depends on their level of knowledge. And security is still, let's face it, the government deals with information and security that the rest of the world doesn't have to. So there's still that need for security. So you have to ensure them of that. And yeah, you're seeing that they want to do it because they understand it's the instantaneousness. It's also for disaster and recovery and COOP, it's almost a requirement because you don't have to have the facility. You can have the work at home for the wounded warriors and things like that. And that's what the cloud it's almost like Nguyen was saying, a better way of life.
And as Amanda was saying actually earlier, when you have the upticks, when it's back to school, you could use the cloud to make things bigger. And then when things come back down October, November, make it smaller. Let's look to the future a little bit. Where's customer service going? Where are agencies heading with the idea of customer service? Let me start with Gwen. We'll work our way down. From GSA's perspective, you have this great tool, the data analysis tool that you talked about. What's coming next? Where do you see not just that, but other approaches going?
Well, I want to talk a little bit, not just from GSA's perspective, because my space is really more on the government-wide, so I'll just take it up another level on that, if you don't mind. Or even if you do mind.
I don't. That's why you're here.
One of the things that we're seeing right now is when we're talking about the cloud and we're talking about data, but it's really kind of the decoupling of information from a web page or a website. It's really looking at the mobility of information and services in a way that's very different. We're at the very beginning of this. I mean, there's been some examples for decades in government in terms of making web services available. But what we're looking at is, I was actually read an article yesterday where the author was talking about when we're looking at a web page, we're looking at clicks and scrolling. But we're not really clicking and scrolling. We're pinching and zooming. We're touching. Yeah. And so that our metaphors have to change to make this information more available. And so one of the things that we're seeing in open data is really a discussion about how do we open up this content, make it more granular, and make it available in more types of ways. And if you look at an example of somebody who has done a great job, and I will actually even say that they've had it easy, is the Consumer Financial Protection Board. And the reason why, there's super talented people there, but they got to start at the point when these resources were available. And so they don't have a legacy bunch of stuff that they've had to go through. So they've been in this responsive design, looking at information and data in a way that that's how they started. So they didn't have to go back to the way things were done in before. And I think that they have a model that we're going to be looking at.
All right. Ron, Amanda, you each get about 15 seconds. Where are we heading now? Gwen took all your time.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Amanda, go first.
I think it's going to be more instantaneous feedback with more sophisticated tools. Government can be a little late to the game on this, but I think that as the tools become more readily available, cheaper and accessible in terms of 508 and everything else, I think that it will just be part of everyone's work and not a specific division.
All right, and Ron, you get the last word.
As a baby boomer, we're a large percentage of the population, and we've been spoiled our whole lives with instant information, instant food, fast food, microwaves. And I think the government just needs to be prepared for this mass number of people who've been politically active to be involved more in their government and want that response.
All right, very good. Well, that's all the time we have for today. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Constituent Servicing in Federal Agencies, sponsored by Xerox on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. I'm your host, Jason Miller. I'd like to thank our panelists for their time and insight today. Gwen Costin is the Director of Digital Services Innovation Center in the Office of Citizen Services and Innovative Technologies at the General Services Administration. Ron Woody is a Senior Solutions Architect for Xerox Federal. And Amanda Nguyen is the Director of Web Communications at the Department of Agriculture. If you missed any of this panel discussion, please go to federalnewsradio.com, keyword search, Constituent Servicing.